Hey guys, so the next step in this little Gameboy mod now is to put the backlit screen and put the X inverter. So I've actually opened this already. I've unscrewed all the screws for the back, and this is what we get on the other side. So the screen is actually held in place just with this frame, just actually slotted in place. But we can't take it off yet. We actually have to remove these two screws that are holding this ribbon cable. The reason is that this opens this way, and if we don't, we'll actually just be only able to lift it by a few millimeters. So let's do that right now. These are different screws than the ones for the back, so make sure you separate them well. There you go. So as you can see, this is held by this ribbon cable here and this cable here. So there's two tabs here that you can probably take off. Okay, so what we're going to do essentially is we're going to remove this sort of green silvery backing. So the actual screen, LCD screen, is this is this glassy part. And the reason we can see all the pixels and the dots is because this reflective screen is sending is creating an opaque sort of background. Without it, we wouldn't be able to see anything. So I'm just going to remove this. Now, this is actually layered. So there's a trick to it, is to use a sharp blade and to try and get just in between. This is really hard because I'm looking through my phone. Now there's actually two layers to the screen, so make sure you actually lift the two layers when you're doing this. And just slide your blade until one corner lifts up. There, so I actually have the two layers. You know you have the two layers when you lift it and it's transparent behind it. Okay. There you go. So there's no green left on the glass. Now this is where we have to be careful because we don't want to break the glass. So this is actually stuck to the glass quite well. So the trick here is to slowly edge your way towards the other corner, so that you don't actually peel it off all in one way, and because it'll put too much pressure towards the center of the glass, and if you do that, your glass will break somewhere in the middle. So just make sure you actually lift off every corner first, and you apply even pressure on each corner. So this takes some time, and time is what we have tonight. So you want to get that sort of circular pattern. Now this is easy here because this is the piece that lifts up, but over there it's quite hard. So we're just gonna at least do three corners if we can. I'm going to try and show you what happens if we don't. So you can see there's actually two layers of coating. So sometimes you lift one, but the green is still stuck to the glass. So you have to try again, or try from a different corner. This is what happens if you miss the two layers. You get this first plastic, and then there's another one underneath. Ooh, there you go. This guy is done. That was tedious. Okay. Now we need to clean this glass because there's a lot of glue on this. So I'm going to use some rubbing alcohol, isopropyl, and a few Q-tips just to clean this. There you go. Okay, so the next step now is actually to put this is our backlit screen. So it actually comes with two pads here, plus and minus. So what we need to do is just solder two cables coming out of this to these pads. So let's do that. Okay. And there's one other thing that goes at the end here of your camera icon. That goes at the end of this tab here is this guy, little resistor. So we're actually gonna see if we can reduce it, reduce the length of it by as much as we can. So one thing we need to do is, because this guy here goes here, and these ribbons are actually quite flexible and small, so they will go over the frame, but I'm just going to cut some of the frame here, or at least bring it back down to a more ribbon friendly level. So there's one last thing we need to do, and it's to put this. This is a polarizing filter, and what this does is actually, well, it polarizes light. So if you have it angled one way, it lets light through, and it doesn't the other way. I'm not sure exactly what happens and how they're made, but essentially you need to put the black like that, because when it shines, it'll shine through that, and yeah, that's that's what you have to do. But because we're going to put an X inverter afterwards, which will actually invert the way the pixels are displayed, we need it like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it like that here first, and then when we put the X inverter, we'll invert it again, for the sake of showing you. I could have cleaned it before, but I'll do that again sometime. So let's try that. Now what we have to do now is power this. So luckily there's a capacitor here with plus and minus. So we're going to use this to tap our plus and minus straight into that. And the cables are long enough. Some people cut them. You can actually just pass them through the holes behind, because there's loads of space behind. So might do that, but I've actually probably won't work, because I've put my thing already. But I mean, there's space here anyway for the cable to exist. So we're gonna leave them as they are. I'm probably gonna cut the length of the resistor here. So let's do that. So plus and minus. There you go. can do now is put these screws back on, just to secure the LCD, and our batteries back on, and just test it. In all my talk, I actually forgot how busy the front of the Game Boy is, so I'm just going to put a bit of this is just insulating tape. It's not to insulate anything, it's just to hold it in place. Boom! Backlight mod. That's, yeah, the angle isn't exactly right. Now this is just actually it's cool and all, but it's actually a reminder that how bad the contrast on the Game Boy actually was, because you can't really make out much, and it's not just because my screen is dirty. But one thing we can do is use now an hex inverter. So the way the system works is that essentially the dark pixels are what are creating the background. So whenever you need there's actually a hair trap. Whenever you need the something displayed, black or darker pixels are displayed on screen. So if we actually invert the signal so that everything is dark except when you need something displayed, that's actually the dark is taken off. So, and then use the polarizing screen to revert that process again. Instead of having dark pixels, we'll end up having bright white pixels. In a way, I'm oversimplifying, but this is essentially what's happening. And what we'll get is a hugely contrasted display, where instead of having dark shining, we'll have white shining, and everything else will be dark. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but you'll understand what I mean once we put the X inverter. Actually, for the sake of comparison, this is what happens when you put the polarizing filter the other way. It just inverts all your blacks and white. It works for some people like it, but personally I don't. But essentially this is what it is. So by hardware inverting black and white, and by sort of reinverting them back again, we'll have white that actually shines. Black doesn't need to shine. It actually shines too much and it becomes sort of purplish. So they'll remain black and the white will shine properly. This is what will create the contrast. Now this guy is the hex inverter or bivert module. So there's only two pins that we're interested in here, actually four. So there's we need the ground on your Game Boy, we need some voltage on your Game Boy going into the chip, and we need two of the pins. So I think this is this one actually, and this one. Could be wrong. It's hard to read. And then these two here go on the connectors on your Game Boy. But the beauty of this is that this sits, instead of having a bigger chip, the normal chips were about this big. You had to cut all the legs that you weren't interested in and keep the four that you wanted. So pin 1, pin 3, ground and voltage. This instead, this just nicely sits on top of these. There you go. And all you do is just feed solder here, here and here, just to keep it in place. And then those two pins align with the pins on the connector, sorry. So all we got to do really, and that's the only tricky part, is lift those two pins here. So let's do that. So this is this pin here first, and this pin here. Actually, we're going to do this one first. So I'm just going to heat it up. Okay, so what I've been doing here is just heated up the solder and the pins and lifted the pins slightly off so they're not touching the solder anymore. The reason is our X inverter will slide underneath these. Okay, so we got our module in place. Next steps now is to I don't know if you can see, but essentially this falls right over the soldering or the points. So essentially we just need to fill these holes with solder just to keep it in place. Finally, our last step is to connect the ground. So ground, there's a tab for it here. So we should be all inverted now. There's only one way to check it. It's to power it. So let's do just that. And there you go. So as you can see, it's a huge difference in contrast. It's like it's night and day between just the backlit screen and the X inverter module. Now it really pops out. It's really cool. So I'm just gonna clean everything. I'm just gonna clean the screen, clean the filter, trying to remove that hair that's lodged itself here, close everything, and yeah, pretty much done. So here it is, all put back together, and there you go. Put a new cover as well, and look at that for contrast. So there you go. Hexadecimal bivert or X inverter and backlit screen, and this is the result. There's another mod you can do, and which is put a better jack for the sound, but I never done these. I don't think they're really necessary unless you're into making chip tunes on your Game Boy specifically. Then maybe this is especially if you're performing with it, might be the best way to audio mod your Game Boy. But yeah, I think the screen itself just really gives it a second life. It's quite striking. There you go. That's a Game Boy full restore from looking pretty bad and pretty gritty and yellow to being a fully actually clean and gorgeous now and modded Game Boy. I'm gonna keep this one too. I just love the Game Boy original. Such a cool shape and a cool little system. I love these. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've learned something, and do remember though that the mod itself is quite costly. You know, all in all, it'll probably cost you more to to get an old Game Boy and get the mod and do everything yourself. Get the equipment if you don't have it. Get all the pliers and soldering iron and all the cutters and all that. It's going to cost you a lot more to get all that plus the mod plus the Game Boy than buy a modern one already. So do it only really if you and the Retrobrite or the hair dye product. So do this only really if you have an interest in doing it yourself and if you're curious, because it's not necessarily a money saver. So there you go. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.